Okay, here's one I can totally pick for this. Because the story behind this one is how influential movies can be. So I'm gonna pick this particular song right here. It's going to be "With Your Heels On."
Okay.
Because funny story how that came about. So I'm gonna play it first. I'm gonna play a little bit of it. And the beat goes. Grown and sexy ladies, if you up in the club with a nice pair of heels on, you gon' love it. Let's see you work it with your heels on. Work it with your heels on. Shake it with your heels on. Get naked with your heels on.
You can sing on it so we can hear better.
Oh yeah. Ones, especially the red ones. Nothing but a t-shirt on, go to bed ones. How about the ones that wrap around your leg? Just call me David Ruff because I ain't too proud to beg. Or what about the boots that cover your calf? So when you stick it out, you can stop a cab. On the way to the club, already the floors glammed out, bammed out like Diana Ross. If you got a new shoe game, it's show night. Cause pedicure toes make you stare on sight. I don't care if you 5'3", 4 tight. Cause 7-inch pumps make you reach my height. I love it when you wear the heels with fishnet stockings. Let me know the next time you go shoe shopping, so I can tag along and help you pick a nice pair. Don't move, stand right there. Let me see you work it. Okay.
Woohoo!
That song came about. I was in the middle of finishing the first album, the Plant Soul Syndrome album. So I had pretty much the majority of the songs I wanted. Now, the funny thing about that particular track, because it started with the track first, believe it or not, I had that track for almost 5 years before I even used it. As a true connoisseur of the studio, anytime I had a long studio session and I did everything I needed to do, the last hour I would always save and just be working on different other tracks. Like I don't waste time in the studio. So if I had to do vocals that day, or if I had to do like a bass line or something else that day, if I had a whole hour left, I would jump on the keyboard, create a track, and it depends on what I was feeling at that time. So when I had that track, I had just created it. And I'm just like, it just was like some real funky but industrial kind of music. I had no concept whatsoever. I had the track, no words came out. Because usually sometimes as a songwriter, I'll get the title first. Like if I'm inspired by something that I saw or something that I'm moved by, the title usually comes first for me. And then of course I'll grab my bass or my guitar and just start coming up with stuff. And it all depends on the style too. So in this case, I had that track for 5-something years, didn't lose it, didn't use it, didn't even think about it. So one day, as I'm gathering up all my tracks, I'm like, okay, I got pretty much the majority of the songs I'm going to use for this record. I need something different. So I told my engineer to pull the folder up. He said, well, you got a bunch of these other ones here that you didn't put no vocals on. I'm like, okay, let's just go one by one. And this was the third track that came up. So I was like, I'm like, this song is so dope, but what could I put on it? Like I'm still having, like 5 years later, and I still have nothing mentally to put on it. And interestingly enough, the session was over. I went back home, and one night I was watching one of my favorite shows, which is Sex and the City. And my favorite character, what's the Kim Cattrall's character's name again? The feisty one. Samantha?
Samantha?
Yeah, Samantha was my favorite character because of who she was. I like him spicy. So I was like, I like her, but Carrie Bradshaw always intrigued me because of, she's a narrator. It's really about her. The show is really about her and her friends. So as we all know, Carrie Bradshaw, number one thing was what? Shoes.
Right.
So as I sat there, I'm like, maybe, I don't know. Let's see what happens, Lord. So the idea is already in one part of my head. So I go back to the track now. The more I kept listening to the song, I kept reminding myself, where have I heard this musical vibe before? And then it hit me. It sounded like women walking the runway, white and black. Naomi Campbell, that whole, voguing, showing off, cameras flashing. it always had that hardcore, that heavy drum sound. So between Sex and the City and the runway music that I now realize I created, the more I kept listening to it, with your heels on, with your heels, it just kind of rang in my head. So the counter call and answer thing came from like Cameo Ohio players. Let me see you walk. You know, remember Candy by Cameo? I can feel it when you walk. Even when I want to kind of give a little bit of that Cameo sort of thing, but it's still hip hop, but yet it's still pop.
Mm-hmm.
So being the musician I am, because that track is so deadly, I'm playing everything on it, like it's the whole drum machine pattern, the keyboard, the organ part. So anything that I do, I gotta always put the funk in it. So you see that that's what I'm doing. That's the guitar part. Now keep in mind, if you listen closely, it's kind of based on the idea of Jungle Love by Mars in the Town. That's why.
Right.
So basically, of course, I didn't play it note for note. I'm not going to get sued. So what I did was I left the other part out. I left that part out and just did the. So when you hear that clap, that's a bass line. So that's basically the funk in that song. So that was my way of saying, if this is going to be a pop commercial record for me, then I want to make sure that I have everything that I like as a musician in that particular song.
Mm-hmm.
I took my cues from Kool and the Gang, because the one thing, and of course, Ronald Bell, rest in peace, the genius behind a lot of, for those that don't know, with all due respect to all the members of the band, because they're all crucial to the overall sound of Kool and the Gang, but Ronald's influence in that group is one of the main reasons why they were successful the way they were. Ronald was the one that played the keyboard line on Summer Madness. He did that. That's him.
Wow.
That's probably the most famous keyboard solo in the history of music. And then when they recorded Ladies Night, there's a part in Ladies Night, come on, let's all celebrate. He's the one that took that line and said, let's celebrate. You know what, fellas? We should write a song called Celebration. This song is going to be popular at weddings, bar mitzvahs. See, I remember, the one thing that Ronald Bell did teach me is that if you're going to have pop success, own it. Don't let a record label tell you what you have to do. So the fact that Ronald Bell was like, you know what? We're going to make a song, because you got to remember, for most diehard funk fans, they hate that song. A lot of diehard Kool and the Gang fans, they ultimately hate Celebration.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to piss a funk musician off? You like Kool and the Gang? It's like, yeah, we love Celebration. They'll look at you like this. Like, wow. I don't see, to me. Well, I mean, see, yeah, because you know why? Here's the thing, and I'm gonna say this respectfully, because basically, it was a cool R&B pop record that crossed over. And the funny thing about it is that I think that once white mainstream got a hold of it, it kind of became like this whole thing as to where, well, as soon as they took it over, we don't want it no more. But that's not really the case. The whole point is just that Kool and the Gang made this change on purpose because they saw the changing times ahead. They said, if we don't start incorporating some of this disco pop thing and where music is going, we're not going to last. Because remember, Ladies Night saved them from becoming an obscure group. They had 3 albums before Ladies Night. They got lucky with Open Sesame. But they were 2 albums that didn't do anything. And they said, okay, what we going to do? Okay, Ronald was the first one that said, God bless him again, the genius. Ronald said, you know what? we've been singing on these records for a long time. And even though we can sing, we're not singers. We need a sanger.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get that JT kid from Jersey. That's a school teacher.
Woo!
JT's a school teacher. And of course, when they
I
brought
used to love JT.
I still love JT. When they brought JT in, that changed the game. It changed the game.
One of the best,
Say it. Come on, say it. Not only one of the best singers, one of the most versatile singers and songwriters, because he also wrote a lot of that stuff too.
Thank you.
They had like JT and Ronald and Cool and Curtis on key. They had a synergy. Same thing with God Bless Clay, Clifford Adams, all rest in peace to all the deceased members of Kool and the Gang. Like I said, every member of Kool and the Gang is important, but Ronald was like the spearhead. He was the one that would be like, okay, you know what, we got this. So going back to what I was saying about being a songwriter, because as you see, I obviously learned a lot from my heroes, is that if you're going to make a pop record or something of that magnitude, make sure you include the elements of who you are. So for Kool and the Gang, when you hear Celebration, as everybody knows, Kool and the Gang is known for their what? Their horn section. So they said, if we're going to do a pop record, let's do it the way we would do it. So for me, honestly, I understood why a lot of diehard Funketeers couldn't get into it. But as I became a better producer and a songwriter, I understood it. Because I was like everybody else. I'm like, yeah, okay. I like Jungle Boogie more. Because I'll be honest with you, I like Kool and the Gang's early period a little bit more because I like the diversity in it. But when I became a better songwriter, I realized, you know what? If it wasn't for these big records like Fresh and Ooh La 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 and Cherish and all that stuff, they wouldn't still be here. It kept them alive in 2020 when they can do all those songs now. Earth, Wind, and Fire, same thing. When Let's Groove is their biggest commercial record in September, is the least of my favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire records, but thank God for it, because they wouldn't be able to do all the other stuff that came before it in a live show. So it's understood. You have to have these mediums. And of course, one of my favorite bands, and that included a lot of my favorite writers, Chicago gets the most conversation about this, because a lot of diehard Chicago fans would be like, once David Foster took over, it was horrible. We hated those records. Hard to Say I'm Sorry, You're the Inspiration. And I get it.
He made it more popular.
That's the whole point. And that's what pop means anyway. Pop is short for popular. So the smartest thing they could have ever did was say, okay, well, Peter Cetera always sang lead on a few songs, but now in the 80s, he's going to become the voice of the group. And that helped, because in 2020, this is why Chicago can tour around the world, and they'll give you all of the pop stuff, but they're going to also give you Saturday in the Park, 25 or 6 to 4, or I Just Want to Be Free. Like, they're going to give you all the old school, hardcore Chicago stuff, but all these other fans, they want to hear the songs that they fell in love to. Because whether you like Hard to Say I'm Sorry or not, that's one of those 80s songs where, you know, a lot of mainstream white people love them. I say mainstream white people because that's what it catered to. And for me, as a young black kid, Peter Cetera's voice was so distinct. Everybody near our way, I heard it say from each other. Yeah. I'm like, I just love his voice. I just, something about his voice that makes me believe what he's singing.
Yes.
And for me as a singer and as a songwriter, David Foster, how do we write these songs directly to the matter? Because they're specially crafted. Remember, David Foster's first hit song was After Love Is Gone for Earth, Wind, and Fire, which was originally written for Chicago.
Yes, so, I saw the documentary of David Foster on Netflix. He was kind of hated when he was younger. Now they are grateful for what he did.
I'm just glad that I learned early, because as a songwriter, you always want to tap into every source that you possibly can. Because if you listen to my first album, I tap a whole bunch of styles. Of course, primarily you're going to get your funk and R&B and your hip hop and stuff like that. But in certain songs, I throw some jazz things in there. As you know, because of my grandfather's relationship with all of his doo-wop buddies like Benny King and the Drifters and the Coasters, the Olympics, those are all his friends. So when you hear when people come to me like, yo, Lord, I love your harmonies, I said, that's my doo-wop upbringing. I'm used to hearing 4 parts in the song. So it's like, for me, I wanted to incorporate that in my music. So that becomes a very dangerous thing. So with your heels on, going back to the song, I wanted to incorporate the best of my favorite worlds, but the catalyst for that song, it came 5 years later. I was sitting on that track for all that time, and it didn't hit me until 5 years later on what kind of vibe that track had. I let Ruth, and a matter of fact, Ruthie Davis, yes, one of my good friends, the great Ruthie Davis, she loves that song. It's one of her favorite songs. So, and Ruthie Davis, as everybody knows, one of the greatest shoemakers of the last, 15-something years. I mean, Beyonce and Christina Aguilera and all the A-list actresses, they wear all her shoes. So when she heard my song, that's my buddy. When she heard my song, she loved it. I even did a remix putting her name in it. So that's just even more of a reason to celebrate the fact. And then, honestly, to be real with you, a lot of my inspiration when it comes to any songs like that is mostly women anyway. So for me, as a pure masculine man that's pro-woman, and growing up a family full of women, I'm able to write from that perspective of what I like to see. And to me, I love seeing a woman get excited about anything that she's into. Like if you're not into, let's say if you're into ping pong, I love it. Your passion for ping pong, I'm with you. So on a sensual level, if I like the way my woman looks and I love the kind of shoes she wears and she's into shoes, that's why I've noticed that's when in my song I said, let me know the next time you go shoe shopping so I can go with you and help you pick a nice pair. Don't move. Stand right there. Let me see you working. That's me. I'm a Scorpio. That's the kind of guy I am. Like I celebrate the woman I'm with or if I'm whoever I'm dating at that point, because whatever makes you excited, I'm even more excited. And in my opinion, most men should be like that, because if you want her to get into what you're into, try getting into what she's into. It doesn't mean that you have to be, up on her all the time. You have to be everywhere she goes, but just like a couple of things. If you're there, kind of see what she's into and kind of show a genuine interest, even if it's not your thing. Just kind of be able to say, well, why do you like, what fascinates you about shoes? I just want to know what fascinates you. I know why I like you in them, but I want to know, why do you love shoes the way you do? So that's what that song is about. It should help most men if they never understood it before, but then most women can celebrate. And every time me and Dorsey and the fellas do that live, the women loved it. We've had girls dance on tables when that song came on. One girl was sitting in the front and she put her shoe up in the air to show me what kind of heels she had on. I'm like, I love stuff like that because it shows you the power of songwriting.
Yes. Wonderful.
That's the whole idea why I love being a songwriter, because you're able to write from these different perspectives and it does not resonate until you see your fans jump on it. So that made me feel good to see things like that when we would do the song,
Wonderful, wonderful. So that song and your album is on Spotify and all other.
Yes, the Planet 12 Syndrome is on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, all that stuff. Amazon as well. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Lord. Today I have one last question.
Go for it.
Okay. So what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Great question. When I was 20, that was a whole nother transition, because now, from once you hit 20, you're no longer a teenager. So Planet 12, I started at 12 years old. So think about 12 years old all the way to 20. The one thing that I would tell that guy at that point was to stop trying to commit people who are not committed to understanding who you are. Because at that time, with the exception of my friends, my close friends who I'm still close to, and of course my family members and people who I love, one of my tag names is Mr. Misunderstood, because I don't think people understood why I love the music that I did and why the things I did on stage, and just because I wanted to kind of take people on a different level of what I was doing. And I found myself forcing myself to make people understand me when they were committed to not understanding me. And I wasted a couple of years trying to prove that. I mean, eventually I got it right, but I would say to that guy, F all that. If they don't understand you, keep going. And as you see, I did keep going. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now.
Right. So, it's a waste of energy trying to make them understand what they right.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Lo. It was so much fun talking to you.
Same here. I miss you so much. And thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Hope to see you in person again.
Oh, yes. That's going to happen. That's inevitable. You know that. It's
So
gonna happen.
until we see each other again, sayonara.
Yes, sayonara.
Don't forget to click subscribe and hit the bell to get notified about new videos of Songwriters Room or my new music or Japanese series. Thank you for watching. Arigato. Sayonara.